Emma sat quietly in the softly lit dressing room, the delicate rustle of her wedding gown the only sound breaking the silence. The grand hall outside was already filled with guests, laughter and chatter drifting faintly through the walls. But inside, Emma felt a strange emptiness. This was supposed to be her happiest day, her wedding day, but a heavy knot twisted in her stomach. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, the white dress perfectly fitted, the veil resting gently on her hair, and yet she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her fingers trembled as she traced the lace along her sleeve. Everyone expected her to be excited, radiant even. Her family, her friends, the whole town. After all, Emma was marrying Jason, a man everyone believed was perfect for her. Charming, successful, and well-liked, Jason seemed to have it all. But Emma knew something no one else did. Beneath Jason's polished smile, there was a coldness, a control that stifled her. Over the months leading to this day, she had become a shadow of herself, losing little pieces of joy and freedom with every passing argument she swallowed, every silent night she endured. Her heart ached with doubt. She remembered the quiet mornings when Jason ignored her questions, the evenings when his frustration boiled over at the smallest thing. She loved him once, or at least she thought she did, but now love felt like a cage. She wanted to speak up, to tell someone, anyone, that she wasn't sure this was right. But the fear of breaking expectations, of disappointing her family, kept her silent. Emma thought about how many times she had told herself, "Tomorrow will be better." A soft knock at the door startled her. It was her mother, smiling gently. "Emma, darling, it's almost time. Everyone is waiting." Her voice was warm, but there was a hint of urgency beneath it, the kind that comes with trying to hold everything together. Emma forced a smile and nodded. "I'm ready," she said, though she didn't feel it. As Emma rose, her gaze flicked to a framed photograph on the dresser, a picture of her and Daniel, her childhood friend. They had grown up together, sharing secrets and dreams under the summer sun. Daniel had always been kind, steady, the one person who made her laugh when she felt like crying. But time and circumstances had pulled them apart, and he had never told her how deeply he cared. Emma's fingers brushed the photo before she tucked it away, a quiet ache in her chest she tried to ignore. Down the hallway, the soft murmur of guests grew louder. The doors to the grand hall stood tall and proud, decorated with flowers and twinkling lights. It was breathtaking, the kind of place people dreamed of for a lifetime. But to Emma, it felt like a prison on this day. The clock ticked steadily. Minutes slipped away, drawing her closer to a moment she wished she could pause forever. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. She wished she could run, escape the expectations, the roles she was forced to play. She wished for honesty, for courage to speak the truth out loud. But as she walked slowly toward the door, the heavy weight of everyone's eyes waiting for her outside felt unbearable. The hall was filled with smiling faces, but none of them saw the storm inside Emma's heart. As she stepped forward, her eyes met Jason's. His confident smile was like a mask, the same mask that had hidden so much. The music began to play softly, signaling the start of the ceremony. Emma's footsteps echoed in the vast room as she moved down the aisle, the whispers of guests fading into the background. Yet inside, her mind was racing. What if this day was a mistake? What if she was choosing the wrong life? She glanced around, searching for something, someone, anything to hold on to. Suddenly, the grand doors at the back of the hall opened wider. A figure stepped in, calm, composed, and familiar. It was Daniel. Emma's heart skipped a beat. The surprise was shared by everyone present. Whispers started to ripple through the crowd. Daniel's eyes met Emma's, steady and full of unspoken words. He didn't rush forward or make a scene. Instead, with quiet confidence, He walked up to the wedding planner and held up a thick contract. The word "sold" was stamped boldly across the top. The room fell into stunned silence. Emma froze. The wedding, the ceremony, the entire day seemed to hang, suspended in that moment. Her mind struggled to catch up. Why would Daniel buy the venue? What was he trying to say? Was this some kind of mistake, or was it the lifeline she had been hoping for, but too scared to reach out for? As all eyes turned toward Daniel and the contract in his hands, Emma felt a flicker of something new, hope mixed with fear. The day that had once seemed destined to trap her was suddenly full of questions, possibilities, and the chance to find her own truth. Jason's smile never wavered as he watched Emma walk down the aisle. To everyone else, he was the perfect fiancé, handsome, successful, charming. But behind that polished exterior was a man Emma had come to fear. Over the past months, his warm words had turned cold and controlling, and the person she loved had become a stranger. Jason's demands, his sharp criticisms, and his need to dominate every detail of her life had chipped away at her spirit. Emma remembered the late nights when she lay awake, listening to the silence between them, the tension thick enough to suffocate. Jason didn't raise his voice, but his words cut deeper than shouts. He dismissed her feelings, told her she was being too sensitive, and reminded her constantly that he knew what was best for her, for their future. She tried to believe him, to convince herself that love sometimes meant sacrifice. But deep down, she was scared that if she said no, everything she had built would fall apart. Jason's smile flickered briefly when his eyes met Emma's, but it was a practiced expression, rehearsed for the crowd. He had to keep up appearances, especially today. This wedding was not just about them. It was about family, community, reputation. Emma knew if she walked away now, she would face judgment, pity, and endless questions. People would say she made a mistake, that she threw away a good man. Maybe even she believed it herself, sometimes. The ceremony began with the soft notes of the piano, the music wrapping around the guests like a warm embrace. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she held her bouquet, but she forced herself to stay steady. She tried to focus on the vows, the promises about love, trust, and partnership. But the words felt hollow coming from Jason's lips, and she could barely get through her own. As the officiant spoke, Emma's mind drifted back to quieter moments when Jason was different. Before the control, before the coldness. They had laughed together, shared dreams and plans. She clung to those memories like lifelines, wondering if the man she loved still existed beneath the surface. Suddenly, a soft murmur rippled through the guests. Emma's heart skipped. All eyes turned toward the entrance as Daniel appeared once again, calm and collected. The room seemed to hold its breath. Daniel's presence was like a sudden gust of wind, shaking the fragile calm that had held the day together. Jason's smile faded instantly. His jaw tightened as he watched Daniel walk slowly toward the front, the contract still clutched firmly in his hands. The bold "sold" stamped on the paper was impossible to ignore. It was a declaration that changed everything. Whispers filled the hall, confusion spreading like wildfire. Some guests exchanged worried glances, others stared in disbelief. Jason's eyes narrowed, his control slipping, his carefully crafted world beginning to unravel. Emma felt a rush of emotions she couldn't name: fear, hope, anger, relief. Daniel approached her gently and spoke quietly, his voice steady but urgent. He reminded her of the person she had been before all the pressure and doubt: strong, independent, deserving of real love. Emma listened, the walls she'd built around her heart beginning to crack. Jason stepped forward, his voice sharp and accusing. He called Daniel a meddler, someone trying to sabotage their future. But the anger in Jason's words only revealed the truth Emma had tried to ignore, that Jason didn't want a partner. He wanted control. The guests watched silently, sensing the shift in power. For the first time, Emma saw Jason not as the charming fiancé, but as a man afraid of losing what he thought he owned. The contrast between him and Daniel couldn't have been clearer. One desperate to hold on, the other offering freedom. Emma took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The crowd waited, watching her, expecting her to continue down the aisle. But inside, she knew she had a choice to make, not just about Jason, but about herself. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet as she stepped back, away from the path she'd been walking for so long. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like it belonged to her. The room was charged with a tense silence as Daniel stood holding the contract, the word sold boldly stamped across its surface. Every eye in the grand hall was locked on him, some wide with shock, others narrowed with suspicion. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she feared it might betray her calm. How had Daniel managed this? How had he bought the entire venue just hours before her wedding? The question swirled, but no one dared speak. Daniel's gaze met Emma's, steady and sincere. He had never been the type to make grand gestures, but today was different. Today he wasn't just a childhood friend. He was her unexpected lifeline. He stepped forward and spoke, his voice calm but filled with urgency. Emma, this place belongs to you now, not to the man who tries to control your future. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Jason's jaw clenched. His charming facade cracked to reveal the desperation underneath. "This is outrageous," Jason spat, his voice rising. "You can't just buy a wedding venue and stop a wedding. This is not how things work." Daniel didn't flinch. Sometimes, the right things don't follow the rules. Emma deserves to marry because she wants to, not because she's pressured or trapped. The crowd murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked confused, unsure what to make of the sudden upheaval. Emma's mother's face was a mask of shock, torn between worry and curiosity. Her father's hands clenched the arms of his chair tightly, the tension palpable. Emma stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know this would happen." She looked at Jason, searching for a reaction, but he avoided her eyes. "Jason, why did you never ask me what I wanted?" Jason's anger flared, but it wasn't the confident man from before. "Because you always said yes," he said bitterly. "You never made me doubt." Emma's breath caught. The weight of his words sank deep. How many times had she silenced herself to keep the peace? How many dreams had she buried under the weight of his expectations? Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, Emma. You don't have to be afraid anymore." She looked around the room. The grand hall, once a symbol of dreams and celebration, now felt like a stage for something far more real. The future she had imagined with Jason was crumbling, but in its place, a door was opening. It was a door she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through, but she knew she had to. Jason stepped forward, his voice sharp with desperation. "Emma, don't listen to him. This is just a stunt. We can still have the wedding. We can make it work." But Emma shook her head slowly. "No, Jason. I've been trying to make it work for months. I'm tired of pretending." The room was quiet now. Everyone waited, holding their breath. Emma's eyes met Daniel's again. For the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope, a chance for a different kind of love, one built on respect, trust, and freedom. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about reclaiming her life. The grand hall, filled with decades of memories and expectations, was silent as Emma made her choice. And for the first time, it was her choice alone. The room felt heavier now, like the air itself was thick with tension. The grand wedding hall, once filled with laughter and warm chatter, had fallen into a stunned silence. Guests whispered nervously to one another, unsure how to react to Daniel's bold move. The contract in his hand, stamped boldly with "sold," was more than just a piece of paper. It was a line drawn in the sand. Jason's face twisted with frustration. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a sharp, desperate edge. "You think buying the venue changes anything?" he snapped, his voice echoing through the hall. "Emma and I are getting married today, no matter what." But his words rang hollow, even to himself. The tension in the room was palpable, the guests sensing the cracks in Jason's facade. Slowly, people began to realize this was not just a simple wedding dispute. It was a battle for Emma's future. Emma stood frozen for a moment, the bouquet in her hands suddenly feeling heavier than ever. She glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of friends and family, some filled with sympathy, others with confusion. No one really understood the storm inside her, the quiet fear she'd been carrying alone. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Emma doesn't have to go through with this. Not because she's afraid, but because she deserves to choose." Jason's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't get to decide what Emma deserves," he growled. "She's mine." Emma's breath hitched. The words were possessive, like a chain wrapped tight around her heart. She realized then how trapped she had felt all along, not by love, but by control. The wedding planner nervously cleared her throat. "I'm sorry, everyone, but until this situation is resolved, we can't proceed with the ceremony." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some guests looked relieved, others upset. The perfect day they had imagined was crumbling right before their eyes. Emma took a deep breath, the quiet inside her growing louder. The reality was sinking in. This day would not be the fairy tale she had dreamed of. But maybe, just maybe, it could be the first step toward something real. Daniel reached out, gently taking her hand. The warmth of his touch was steadying, a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. Jason's voice cracked as he spoke again, desperation bleeding through. "Emma, don't listen to him. We can fix this. We can be happy." Emma looked at him, really looked. The man she was about to marry was no longer the person she thought she knew. She saw fear, selfishness, and a need to control that went beyond love. Tears welled up in her eyes. For so long, she had been afraid to face the truth. But now, surrounded by friends and family, and with Daniel's unwavering support, she found a courage she didn't know she had. "No, Jason," she whispered. "I won't marry you today. Not like this." Gasps echoed around the hall. Some guests gasped in shock, others nodded quietly, understanding the weight of her words. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "You're doing the right thing." Emma's heart pounded with a strange mix of fear and relief. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it was hers to choose. The wedding hall, filled with decades of celebrations and memories, stood witness to a moment of truth. It wasn't the day anyone expected, but it was the day Emma found her voice. And that was the beginning of everything she truly wanted. Emma sat down on a bench just outside the grand hall, the soft afternoon light filtering through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor. The noise and confusion from inside faded into a dull murmur behind her, and for a moment she felt like she could finally breathe. The weight of the last few hours pressed heavily on her chest, but beneath it all was a spark of something new, a fragile hope. Daniel sat beside her, careful not to crowd her space, but close enough to offer silent support. He didn't say much, knowing words couldn't fix everything, but his steady presence was comforting. Emma looked down at her hands, fingers nervously twisting the lace of her wedding dress. "Emma," Daniel began softly, You don't have to pretend with me. I know how hard this must be. She swallowed, the lump in her throat making it hard to speak. I've spent so long trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect fiancé, the perfect everything. But I'm tired, Daniel. I'm tired of pretending that I'm okay with all of this. Daniel nodded. You deserve to be happy, really happy. Not just because it's expected of you. Emma looked up, meeting his calm, honest eyes. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I end up alone? That's normal, Daniel said gently. But you'll never be alone, as long as you're true to yourself. And sometimes, being alone is better than living with regret. A tear slipped down Emma's cheek. She thought about Jason, his sharp words, the coldness she felt even when they were supposed to be closest. She thought about the future she had imagined, and the future she was now beginning to question. Daniel reached out, lightly brushing the tear away. You have a strength inside you that's been hidden for a long time. It's okay to find it now. Emma closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Memories flooded back, childhood laughter with Daniel, long talks under the stars, the way he always listened without judgment. He had been there through all her dreams, even the ones she never spoke aloud. Why did you buy the venue? She asked quietly. Daniel smiled, a little sad. Because I couldn't watch you walk into a life that wasn't right for you. Not without trying to do something. I hoped it would give you the chance to see your own worth. Emma's heart swelled. She realized then how much Daniel had cared, silently, for all these years. Not as a dramatic rescue, but as a steady presence, waiting for her to find her own way. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow across the garden outside. Emma felt a gentle breeze, as if the world itself was encouraging her to move forward. She turned to Daniel and smiled, a genuine smile that hadn't come easily in a long time. Thank you, she said, for everything. Daniel's eyes sparkled. You don't have to thank me. Just promise me one thing. Promise you'll live your life for you. No one else. Emma nodded, feeling a quiet resolve settle inside her. It wouldn't be easy, and there were no guarantees, but for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they stood up and walked back toward the grand hall. The crowd was still there, waiting for answers, but Emma felt something shift inside her. The story of her life was changing, not because someone else wrote it, but because she was finally ready to write it herself. The grand hall was quieter now, the stunned silence settling like a heavy fog over the gathered guests. Emma and Daniel's return was met with a mixture of curious whispers and uneasy glances. The air crackled with tension, but also something else, anticipation. People could sense that this moment was no longer just about a wedding, but about something far more profound. Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. I have something to say, she began, scanning the faces before her. Some eyes were wide with surprise. Others held quiet encouragement. Today was supposed to be the start of a new chapter, my wedding day. But I've realized that I can't begin that chapter by pretending to be someone I'm not. Jason's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. He opened his mouth to speak, but Emma held up her hand, a quiet command that silenced him instantly. I can't marry someone who makes me feel small, she continued, her voice gaining strength. Not because he doesn't love me, but because he tries to control me. Love should lift us up, not hold us down. The crowd shifted, murmurs rising again, but this time filled with empathy. Emma's parents exchanged looks, their expressions torn between shock and pride. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears, and her father's usual stern face softened. Daniel stood beside Emma, silent but unwavering. He caught her eye and gave a small nod, a reminder that she wasn't alone. Jason took a step forward, anger flashing in his eyes. Emma, you're making a mistake. We've planned this for months. Think of what people will say." Emma shook her head, her resolve firm. "I'm thinking of what I say, what I want. And I want a future where I'm respected and loved for who I am." Jason's face twisted with frustration, but he said nothing more. The fight had drained from him. Emma took a deep breath. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I deserve a chance to find it on my own terms." The room seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, a soft clap echoed from the back of the hall. More hands joined in, and soon the entire room was applauding, not just for Emma's bravery, but for the truth she had spoken so clearly. Tears welled in Emma's eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief and hope. She looked around at the faces of the people she cared about, family, friends, strangers who had come to witness what was supposed to be a celebration, and who were now witnessing something even more important. Daniel stepped forward. "Emma, you've been brave today, and I'll be here for whatever comes next." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be questions, judgment, and moments of doubt. But for the first time, she felt ready. She looked at Jason one last time. "Goodbye, Jason." And then she turned away, walking hand in hand with Daniel out of the hall, into the bright light of a new beginning. After stepping out of the grand hall, Emma and Daniel found themselves in the quiet courtyard, the afternoon sun casting warm hues over the garden. The sound of distant chatter and fading footsteps drifted behind them, but here, away from prying eyes and judging whispers, a calm settled between them. Emma exhaled deeply, the tight knot of tension loosening in her chest. For years, she'd carried the weight of expectations, family, society, even her own fears. But now, that weight felt lighter, as if she had finally released something she hadn't known she was holding. Daniel looked at her with a gentle smile. "You did what you had to do. Not everyone has the courage to stand up like that." Emma gave a small laugh, shaky but genuine. "I wasn't sure I had it in me, but seeing everyone's faces and feeling their support, it gave me strength." They began to walk slowly down a cobblestone path, surrounded by blooming flowers and the soft rustle of leaves. For the first time in months, Emma allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the narrow life Jason had planned for her. Daniel broke the silence. "What do you want to do now?" Emma paused, considering the question carefully. "I want to figure out who I am, without anyone telling me who I should be. I want to travel, maybe take that art class I always dreamed of. And I want to be with people who respect me." Daniel nodded. "Sounds like a good plan. And I'll be here every step of the way." A warmth bloomed in Emma's chest. Daniel's friendship had always been a quiet, steady presence in her life, but today it felt like a lifeline, pulling her towards something better. Suddenly, Emma's phone buzzed. She hesitated, but answered. It was her mother. "Emma," her mother's voice was soft, tentative. "I just want you to know / I'm proud of you. It takes a lot to stand up the way you did." Emma's throat tightened. "Thank you, Mom. I needed to hear that." "I know things are complicated," her mother continued, "but whatever you decide, we're here for you. Always." The call ended, and Emma stared at her phone, tears pricking her eyes again. She realized that while some relationships might be strained, others were ready to grow stronger. Daniel watched her quietly. "Your family loves you. They'll come around." Emma nodded slowly. "I hope so." As they walked back toward the city, the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with oranges and pinks. Emma felt a flicker of excitement, the kind that comes from stepping into the unknown with open eyes. They talked about the future, small plans, big dreams, and the kind of freedom Emma had almost forgotten existed. No promises, no guarantees, just the possibility of a life built on honesty and respect. That night, as Emma lay in bed, She realized she wasn't just free from a wedding she didn't want. She was free from the fear that had held her back for so long. And that freedom, she knew, was the most beautiful beginning of all. Months passed, and Emma felt the weight of the past lifting with each new day. The shock of canceling the wedding had rippled through her world, but with time, the storm settled into something quieter: hope. She spent mornings wandering through the city's art galleries, soaking in colors and stories she had long ignored. Afternoons were filled with small classes where she learned to paint, her fingers stained with hues that felt like freedom. Every brushstroke was a step away from the shadow Jason had cast over her life. Daniel was always nearby, sometimes walking beside her on city streets, other times sharing quiet dinners filled with laughter and easy conversation. Their friendship blossomed naturally, built on years of trust and shared memories. But beneath the surface, a new feeling grew, something tender and real, woven between stolen glances and gentle touches. One chilly autumn evening, as they walked through a park lined with golden leaves, Daniel stopped and looked at her with a softness Emma hadn't noticed before. "Emma, I've been wanting to tell you something." Her heart quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "What is it?" He smiled, a little nervous. "I care about you, more than just a friend. I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to rush anything. I just want you to know how I feel." Emma's breath caught. She looked around at the falling leaves, the quiet beauty of the moment, and then back at Daniel. "I care about you too," she admitted. "More than I expected." They stood there, the world around them fading into the background. It wasn't a perfect fairy tale, but it was real, a beginning built on honesty and healing. Emma's family slowly began to heal as well. Her parents reached out more often, their conversations growing warmer and more understanding. Her mother even admitted she had worried about Emma's happiness, but was proud of her strength to take control of her own life. One afternoon, Emma received a letter from Jason. It was brief, apologetic, and without the usual sharpness. He admitted he had been wrong to try to control her and wished her well. The letter didn't erase the pain, but it gave Emma a sense of closure. Sitting by her studio window, surrounded by canvases filled with vibrant colors, Emma realized how far she had come. She was no longer the woman afraid to speak up or walk away. She was someone who had reclaimed her story. Life wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but Emma faced them with a quiet confidence. She had learned that true love wasn't about possession or control. It was about respect, trust, and freedom. As the sun set beyond the city skyline, Emma felt a deep peace settle within her. The future was unknown, but for the first time, it was hers to shape. And that made all the difference.